Committee, Ms. DeLauro.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and Ranking Member Cartwright, my apologies for dashing in and eventually dashing out. There are several hearings, so trying to make as many as I can. And Director, so pleased that the President's budget for 2025 increases funding to hire additional FBI personnel, helping to bolster your capacity to deter cybercrime, combat foreign intelligence activity against the U.S., improve the national instant criminal background check system. And I know my colleague, Mr. Morelli, discussed that issue. First of all, I should say thank you to you for making a visit to New Haven, Connecticut, just a few weeks ago, and really delighted to have you there. Was the opportunity to be in a field office, if you will, and to talk about the FBI's work in my state. And to piggyback off my colleague's comment, what I wanted to do was to address the work with task forces. I view what you are doing with regard to state and local government is overall infrastructure. Like, we have a public health infrastructure. We rely on state laboratories, et cetera. And when you look at defunding those efforts, you look like at the collapse of the ability to move forward with regard that the CDC has the inability to move forward. But I think sometimes, some of my colleagues are unaware of just how frequently the FBI works in very close partnership with state and local law enforcement to be able to deal with crime. If you could talk about what are the lessons learned by both the FBI and state and local law enforcement about ways in which the task forces that were mentioned maximize that effectiveness in fighting a crime. And I don't know if there are any stories that are especially worth highlighting, but I would finally add, what happens, because there are many, as you know, would look to defund the FBI. Been a lot of discussion about that, cut back on the resources. What does that mean to the support of that national infrastructure, if you will, that you rely on and they rely on you in order to deal with violent crime and other things in the U.S.? If you could comment on that.
Sure. I think one of the things that a lot of people don't fully appreciate is how integrated today's FBI is with state and local law enforcement, and how dependent, frankly, state and local law enforcement is on us when it comes to fulfilling our shared mission of keeping Americans safe. You mentioned the task forces. Through our Safe Streets and Violent Crime Task Forces, we've got thousands of police officers and sheriff's deputies who, from hundreds of different departments and agencies that serve on our task forces, taking, as I said, I think earlier, last year we took together 50 violent criminals and child predators off the streets per day, every single day, all year long, 365 days a year when you average it out. A cut to our budget means a cut to our efforts to do that work, which means more of the burden then gets shifted on the state and local law enforcement to handle those threats alone. I could go the same thing through multiple other threats, because we have task forces on terrorism, cyber, child exploitation, et cetera. But it's not just arrests. I think if you talk to chiefs and sheriffs like I do every week, you will hear constantly a refrain about how much they depend on the FBI for things like our technology and our expertise. So it's the DNA testing, it's cellular analysis, it's all sorts of complex forensic expertise that small departments in this country don't have, but they lean on us to provide that, and that's one of the first things that they cite. You talk about our CJIS division in West Virginia, which is the one that is responsible for NCIC background checks when some officer is stopping somebody on the streets. That's how they know whether the person's dangerous or not, or fingerprint identification, or the threat reporting that comes into our National Threat Operating Center, which are often threats to life, school shootings, whatever else it happens to be, that we're then pushing out to state and local law enforcement. Cuts to those programs means all those ways state and local law enforcement is flying blind. And then you got things like training, right? A lot of people don't know this. The FBI is, for example, responsible for training all the civilian bomb techs. So the bomb techs for every police department in the country that have bomb techs are trained by the FBI in our facility in Huntsville. And cuts to our ability to provide that training means impacts on our ability to train, bomb tech personnel. But it's all sorts of other training. We provide all sorts of training to state and local law enforcement at Quantico. And as I said, I'm talking with chiefs and sheriffs in one way or another pretty much every week. And there's only two ways the conversation goes. Thank you, Director, for all the great things the FBI is doing for us. We need even more. And just, Director, we need even more. I have yet to meet a chief or sheriff who wants the FBI to give them less. And so I think people need to understand that cuts to our budget don't just hurt the FBI. They hurt all those state and local law enforcement partners, many of whom, unlike the FBI, have recruiting challenges and retention challenges. They're all down in terms of their head count. They've got their own budget challenges. So hurting us compounds their challenges and makes it harder for them to protect the neighborhoods and communities that we're all working together to try to protect.
I'll just make a final comment to you. I think it would be critically important for what you've just said and for members to understand and maybe talk with, hear from their local law enforcement folks and understand what the connection is between state and local law enforcement and the FBI. I think we'd see a lot less movement in the direction of saying, let's defund, let's eliminate, let's do all of these things when we look at the overall law enforcement infrastructure in the United States, which is part of our national security and defending the homeland and doing whatever we want in that direction. Thank you so much for your service. Really appreciate it.
Mr. Ryder Holt?
Thank you, Director Wray. It doesn't always get a lot of media coverage, but there's been a lot of hostility against church